just, I suppose, from my end, just to kind of set the scene as to why we're doing this, we're calling it Career Insight. I like to call it Player Journey. The idea is to give lads a bit of a chance to hear from a player who hasn't been out the game for that long. I've been out 3 years. Tim's been out just a year. He's had a pretty seamless transition, doing really well. But, you know, hopefully if you take one thing from this webinar, hopefully it's going to perhaps inspire you, give you some advice for your journey, or, you know, help you going forward in terms of preparing for life after rugby. So we'll be covering how Tim's found transition, the pros and the cons, the journey so far he's been on, how he got into property development, and as a player, how he upskilled and gained experience to put him in the best place possible for life after rugby. And he'll answer any questions you've got at the end. We've got the second one next week. We've got Ollie Cohn on, who's going to be talking about entrepreneurship. The week after, it'll be a personal training themed one. So listen, we want to hear from Tim, so I'll introduce him. I asked him to send me a bio before we started. It was pretty lengthy, so I've cut some of the stuff out. But, you know, 33 caps for Scotland, Quins 65 games, Falcons 60 games, 140 games for Edinburgh, 100 metre dash 13.6, bench press 1 rep max 145. Vis, thanks very much for joining. How are you doing? How's lockdown going?
It's good. It's good. You've definitely made some of those up, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I know you're faster than 13.6. So
there's no way I benched. To be fair, maybe close.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. I'm good. You know, we were talking about this earlier. It's been sort of slightly challenging in that you know, I have 2 young children, so being in the house all day, having them run around is keeping them entertained is tricky. But apart from that, you know, we're all in good shape. Everyone's healthy. No one I know has been affected by the virus, luckily. So I think, you know, in the grand scheme, we're pretty good.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Listen, I don't want to keep this for too long. 30 minutes, 40 minutes max. So we'll get straight into it. We mentioned before, you've been out of the game now for 1 year. Tell us how transition's been for you in terms of what did you think it looked like as a player to what it actually, you know, the reality of it. What is it actually like? Is it what you thought? And how are you getting on with it, you know, a year out the game?
How did I think it was going to be? I had a plan coming out. So when I was with Quins, in sort of December 18, I had a knee operation, which I kind of came back from in April 19, but it just didn't really feel the same anymore. I was starting to feel slower. I hated training, and Quins had a lot of good young wingers coming through. So I kind of, you know, having prepared for what I wanted to do for such a long time, I felt like sticking around for another year and seeing out my contract was just kind of holding me back from what I was going to hopefully do the rest of my life. So just a little bit of background. I've been in property ever since I bought my first property. Realistically, I was 18, playing for Newcastle. I bought my first flat, and then ever since that, I've just kind of kept buying, first by myself, but later with another player, a business partner of mine who also played for Scotland. And just over the years, you know, having a decent amount of disposable income, always pumped that into property. So, you know, we now have a portfolio of about 10 properties. I've got 9 in Edinburgh, I've got 1 in Newcastle, and they kind of provide me with an income, which kind of means that every year we can sort of keep buying. You know, it's creating enough revenue to keep expanding the portfolio, but it also means that during you know, harder times, for instance during lockdown now, I've not really been able to work. It provides me with an income, so there's no panic when things are down a little. But like I said, I was kind of feeling like it was going to keep me back, and at that point I'd done a lot of preparation. I finished my bachelor's degree in business studies from the Open University. You know, if any of the guys are looking at studying, Open University is incredible. I mean, it's super flexible. Employers like degrees from the Open University because they feel like it shows commitment, because many people do it next to their full-time job. But secondly, you know, the degrees are incredibly specific. They do anything and everything. And that's kind of helped me prepare for running my own business. Now, let me just rewind a little bit. Towards the end of my career, and when I kind of knew sort of early 2019 that I was going to quit, you start panicking a little bit because you've got a plan and you think, right, well, I want to do this and this. I've prepared for so long. It's time to kind of put it into action now. And initially, I always wanted to get into property development, but the government's made it a lot harder. You know, the margins are smaller. It's hard to turn properties around within 6 months if you have high street lending. The tax implications have all changed, so it's become trickier. So anyway, I got offered a job by a big hotel chain to join their real estate planning management side straight out of Rugby. An incredible salary, fantastic perks, a lot of travel, all really good. Anyway, literally finished Rugby end of May. I'm on holiday in Mallorca and I get a text from the CEO. Listen, the job fortunately isn't there right now. We're going through some restructuring. You know, it could be there in a couple of months, but we can't be certain. So, you know, as any sort of typical rugby player, I hate being out of control. So literally the first thing I did is I texted a good friend of mine that lives in London and he's got a background in banking and does a bit of financing. I said, listen, let's start a property development company. Let's just do it, be our own boss, you know, not having to rely on anyone. And just kind of take the whole situation back into my hands. And he was incredibly supportive, incredibly enthusiastic, and has since become my business partner on this side of things. So I run a property development company called Visser & Co. Obviously the Visser and the Co. But we specialize in city centre apartments in Edinburgh. 1-2 beds, stuff that needs a decent amount of work, but nothing structural. So we typically go into properties where, for instance, an older lady has died, 7 layers of wallpaper, it needs a new bathroom, new kitchen, full new decor, some joinery stuff, plumbing, maybe new wiring. So all the trades kind of come into it, but ideally we don't like to deal with rejigging walls, turning rooms around, that kind of stuff, because building warrants slow everything down and it makes everything harder in terms of legislation. It's easier for us to turn money around twice in, say, 6 months on 2 separate projects than having all of our money stuck in one project for a total of 6 months, as you can imagine. So we started in September. I did a summer in Holland after rugby, went back to the family, and then started in September. And by lockdown, we'd finished our first 3 projects. So we were in a really good roll. We had sort of 3 more in the pipeline, ready to sort of complete the conveyancing on, take the keys and get going. And then, lockdown happened. So we've literally been twiddling our thumbs ever since. But luckily enough, started again on Monday. So we're back in one of our next projects now. And the work has started, which is encouraging.
You said you referred there that you had a plan. So just from my point of view, so I didn't really have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to go into. I've been out of the game 3 years now. As a consequence, the first year I found very tough. I went into a sales job. I absolutely hated it. So like how, I can see now, having been out of the game for, a period, how important it is to plan and put kind of the irons in the fire, as even just finding out what it is you want to do is a start. Finding out what you want to do is as important. So you said you had a plan. So, that's how did you get the plan? How did you find out it was property development you wanted to actually do? Was it just by chance?
I think, having had that portfolio over all those years, we've had to do work to properties. So, we've bought properties which haven't been in great state. So it needed a new kitchen or maybe a new bathroom. The ongoing maintenance on our portfolio has meant that we've kind of dealt with all sides of what you kind of need in property development. Obviously, the numerical side comes into it and work into budgets and everything else, which we weren't used to, or I wasn't used to. But from a work perspective, we had done all the different types of work to properties which you would encounter in property development. So I think, my plan was very much to invest as much as I could in myself. So when I moved down to Queen's in 2015, I'd done 2 years of a bachelor's degree in business studies. So my first priority at that point was like, listen, I need to finish this because it's going to look real sloppy on a resume when I don't have that final year. You know, I don't have my diploma. So I went back to the Open University. I finished that in my time at Harlequins. And then the next thought was, you know, what's missing on my CV? What do I need to do? And it was very much sort of the work experience side of things. So I looked into banking. You know, at one point I thought my future might well be in banking. So I started doing a lot of work experience with RBS. I went through all the various departments. I shadowed managers, regional directors from Coots, NatWest, RBS, all the different branches. Commercial teams, hotel and leisure teams, literally anything I could get my hands on. You know, I was in the city and I was seeing what they were actually doing. And you know, fundamentally, I think business is all the same. You know, you need to work the budgets, you need to have a product that you can sell, you need to manage efficiently, and all of that kind of is going to help me in later life. So even though I was looking into banking at that point, you know, it's all business and it's all building relationship. It's all very similar stuff in the end of the day. And I think, you know, having felt like I was investing in myself, I felt that even if I wasn't going to be running my own company, I would be more employable at the end of this. It's going to look impressive on your CV. If every Wednesday you have off from Harlequins, you're in the city, you know, trying to improve your knowledge, your connections, and ultimately, yes, finding out what you want to do. And I think, you know, whatever that may be, you know, I think if I could turn the time back now, I wish I'd done something vocational and, you know, learned how to be a plumber or learned how to be a trader, because some of these guys earn some really, really good money. You know, I think as rugby players, we're obviously incredibly privileged with some of the wages we pick up, but if you look at some of the vocational stuff out there and the shortages of trades nowadays, you know, I struggle sometimes to get electricians, plumbers, good joiners are hard to find, and you know, they'll be touching on 100K if they have a good year. So you know, don't just think that university and college is the only way to go. You know, look at something that you want to do, and that leads me back to where you can go after rugby. And yeah, I agree. I think it's incredibly important to find something that you want to do. You hear a lot of stories about rugby players, and you know, like you just described yourself, finishing rugby and then going into a shitty sales job or being stuck in an office somewhere. And you know, we've had such a good career in rugby, and it's been so much fun. I think in terms of the whole mental health side of things, you find something that you want to do, and then find out how you can earn a lot of money with it. Don't let money be the end goal. Of course, you need to earn a lot of money, but you're not going to be able to have a job and earn a load of money after rugby and enjoy it. Time. Sorry for swearing.
Sorry, we can edit that. So. Here, Vis, you said you're chatting to you in the week. You said you're ready mentally. Were you ready mentally because you knew you had a plan in place whilst you were playing? See, I wasn't mentally ready. I just kept thinking the dream would keep going, and I got to 35. The body was bashed up, and I couldn't keep going. So, was that why having a plan obviously helped with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me it was a very natural progression because there wasn't as much fear for going into the next stage. I think, you know, having earned so much money over such a long time, it's quite easy.
We're not all on. We're not all
no,
on
but
the same amount of money as
median,
you, big
I
man.
mean, the average player in a premiership, I heard, picks up 100K nowadays, right? I mean, if you look at the average salary outside of London being something like £26,000, it's, you know, we earn a lot of money across the board. Yeah. And I think the first and foremost, you need to make sure that you've got your affairs in order. You need to make sure that you can live lean. You know, you don't need to necessarily live lean, but making sure that if shit hits the fan, you can live lean. You know, don't have a ridiculous mortgage, 2 car payments, and everything else that comes with it. But at the same time, you know, having a plan in place for after rugby means that financially those worries just aren't there. You know, I knew that even if I wasn't going to be working, my portfolio income would, you know, see me through enough, and I'd be fine. But also, you know, having that plan there, yeah, it makes it a lot easier, because even though you don't know where you're going to end up, you know where you'd like to end up, so it gives you some sort of direction. But for me, mentally, I was absolutely done with rugby. I remember running out of the stoop for a full house Saturday afternoon, running out, and I was thinking, yeah, I actually don't want to be playing rugby right now. And literally, I'd play half a rugby, and I was like, shit, we have to go out for the second half as well. It wasn't even necessarily my body so much. I just wasn't enjoying it so much anymore. I'd been doing it for 15 years, and the thrill of it had just gone. You hear players that want to be doing this their whole life. They're gutted when they have to finish. They miss the thrill after rugby. I just didn't have that. And whether that's because I felt like I was ready for the next phase or not, it made it a lot easier for me, because I didn't feel like I left my dream behind. I felt like I achieved everything in my career that I could have achieved, and now was the next step. And the fact that I've been preparing for so long gave me a real sort of drive to try and prove myself in something completely disconnected from rugby. And that's also the other side. I didn't want to be hanging around in rugby, so I didn't want to be a coach. I didn't want to be a manager or an agent or anything like that. And I felt like I'd put so much time and effort into developing myself from a business perspective, that I also wanted now the chance to try that, and to try and test those skills completely away from rugby.
That sounds awesome, mate. The transition for you, it all seems real positive, which is great. And, I think that is the case a lot of the time. Transition is positive. As I said, it wasn't for me the first year. I'm in a good place now. But, just what, apart from positives, have there been any negatives that you found since finishing up?
For sure. It all sounds fun, but like you said, it's not like that constantly. The fear initially of not knowing where you're going to end up. Like when you finish your contract with a club, you want to end up another club.
Yeah.
I thought I had a job lined up with a big hotel chain. Kind of that. I got nervous about that when I didn't hear that for a while. Anxious and all that kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, my mental health is absolutely fine, but you get anxious, you get nervous, and all that kind of stuff. And when that fell through, I was like, wow, oh no, what am I going to do now? So literally straight away went to plan B, and got in contact with this friend, and almost within the space of a couple of weeks set up a company. And I think there's a couple of funny side bits, because when I finished rugby, I was very done with exercise. I always hated the gym. I hated training. I was very much all about playing games, and I only kind of just trained to get to the games kind of situation. So when I finished rugby, like I said, I went to Holland for a couple of months, and I just went, right, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to the gym. I'm not going to do any exercise. I've been doing this for 15 years straight. There's no way I'm going to do it for fun now. So I stopped, and literally within the space of a couple of weeks, I got incredibly agitated, short fused, whatever else. And one morning, I went out for a run. It must have been about 2-3K, which for me is actually quite a lot. And I came back, and I felt incredible. I felt positive. I felt, right, I can do whatever I want to do. I can do it. How hard can this all be? And it just completely changed my perspective on what I was going to do and what I needed to do to get there. And I think there's no coincidence that a lot of athletes are so confident, because I think exercise brings confidence. It teaches you that you can do things, but it releases the hormones that kind of, they give you that confidence that you can kind of conquer everything. And I think that was a large part for me that I kind of had to rediscover. And the other side also is, when you're going through long seasons, rubbish weather, you're knackered, and having done that for 15 years, you feel like, oh, I just want to sit on my ass for 3 months. So when I went to Holland, the plan was just to do nothing for 3 months. But as soon as you lose purpose, it all falls apart. You need something in your life. I think I was just sitting around, playing around with the kids, and I've got a boat over there, so I was out on the water. But you need to do something. You can't just sit around and get agitated and lose your purpose, because as soon as you lose that direction, and especially for players like us, we've kind of almost been institutionalized, going to training every day, breakfast, training, lunch, leave. It was very choreographed. And when you don't have that direction, suddenly make up your own time. It's, you need to install some routine in your life. Go to the gym, make sure you do things at certain times. We've heard a lot about it during lockdown. Getting a routine. But yeah, that was a real challenge for me initially.
Yeah, and I think like loss of identity is a big one because, like for me, I was 17 years a player. I come out of the game, and then for that first year, I was in a job I hated. I wasn't a professional rugby player anymore, and I was trying to find out what I was. I felt like I didn't have any purpose, I didn't have any value. So it takes time, but from what you're saying, have a plan, get a plan in place, and work hard while you're playing. Get your studies done if you can, and then try and gain as much work experience as you can. Find out what you like, find out what you don't like. And just this, what advice, a year out of the game now, looking back now, if you were still a player, what advice would you give to the lads? Not necessarily just for property development, but just for any kind of career they're kind of thinking about. The knowledge you've got now, being out the game a year, is there any kind of advice or tips or anything you think you would have done better while you were a player?
I think, education's not everything. It gives you a really good baseline, but I think university degree is incredibly overpriced, overrated. But it gives you a good grounding, it gives you a CV. If you don't necessarily have a plan as to what you specifically want to do, if you have a university or a college degree or some type of learning on your resume, that's really positive for employees to see, because it demonstrates that you can learn, that you're clever, that you're not just any other numpty, And I think part with that is, I think you need to back that up with work experience. You need to show that you want to learn, that you want to go into these environments where you'll inevitably end up after rugby. And I think what makes that better for rugby players is that at the same time, you can very quickly discover what you do and don't like. I saw guys in the banking world behind desks all day long typing numbers, and like I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not going to be sitting there. I want to go out and meet people. So I was looking into being a relationship manager, but obviously that eventually didn't work out. But again, it helped me find out what I didn't want to do, and also kind of steered me towards what I did want to do. But at the same time, you've got something else to put on your CV. So have a look around you, and in your direct environment, every club's got sponsors, and kind of just try and find stuff out. But like I said, don't discount some of the undervalued things in life. I think so much onus has been put on learning and university degrees, but have a look at more vocational stuff. If you're good with your hands and you want to get into property development, get a trade. Imagine if you can do all your own plumbing. I can tell you how much money that would save you.
Yeah, good man. Just specific to property development for lads who are obviously the guys on this webinar have an interest in property development. For a guy who's a player still thinking, that's I'd like to do that after rugby full time, or whether it's for in terms of having a job and having a passive income on the side. What advice in terms of starting up would you give them, and how and what kind of research do they need to do?
I mean, in the end of the day, it's all a numbers game. You need to go into it with a strategy. You need to find out what you want to do. Do you want to be a property developer, or do you want to be a property investor? Or do you simply just want to do property up to increase its value and to therefore give you an inflated value in your portfolio? There's a lot of different ways to get into property. And on the investment side as well, I get people contact me, especially players, contact me all the time, asking, do you think this is a good investment, and that's a good investment? It all just depends on what you want to do. Do you want to buy an expensive property in a good part of town, which is going to give you a lot of capital increase over the next couple of years if the market goes well? Or do you want to go to a rubbish area somewhere, buy something cheap that gives you a lot of rental income? There's different strategies, and there's always a balance with everything you do. But I think if you want to go into the investment side of things and have a passive income, yeah, sure, buy a property here and there. I would be really wary about some of these so-called property consultants that try and get in touch with everyone on LinkedIn and emails and whatever else and offer discounted properties. I don't personally believe in discounted properties. I think if a property is discounted, it's discounted for a reason. One of my good friends came with an apartment the other day, and it was a big poster. He'd been sent by a consultant, and it was a property that was worth 270,000, and he could buy it for 220,000. And all he had to do was pay this consultant $3,000 to do it. So the first thing I asked, why would the owner of this property sell it for £50,000 less? You know, why is he doing that? And you know, there's a lot of common sense in this. Keep thinking, keep asking questions. But on the development side of things, which is what I concentrate on nowadays, it's not a hard profession. You know, anyone can do it, and you've just got to have the money, you've got to have the structure, and most importantly, you've got to have a good team around you. So I was talking about trades earlier. Property developers call it, you know, power teams. Have a good electrician, a good joiner, a good plumber, all the things that are incredibly important, because you need these guys to work to time, you need to work them to budgets, and they need to deliver good stuff. But you know, in essence, it's the same as any type of business. And I said this earlier, you know, you need to buy at a good price. You need to know what you can sell it for, and you need to make sure that you know what it costs to do it up, so that you know what your margin is. So it's not incredibly difficult. In Edinburgh, it's incredibly difficult to buy at the moment. Property is so popular here with a lot of foreign investors that to get your hands on you know, lesser property or dilapidated property, you need to spend a lot of money. And in my profession, that tends to sort of wipe out my margins quite quickly. So you know, we look for off-market deals where we can. We're cash buyers, which makes a bit of a difference. But you know, if you want to do this seriously, you do need a decent amount of money, because at the lower level, if you have to borrow, it tends to wipe out a lot of your profits. You know, to borrow at development rates, because you can't. Well, you can, but you shouldn't be developing property on buy-to-let mortgages, which means that you have to go to development mortgages, which are a lot more expensive. So the way to do it, and the way I do it, is to work with someone that can provide the capital. I provide the whole business side of things. So I'm responsible for refurbing the properties, buying, selling, all that kind of stuff. And my business partner does the whole financial side of things. And this is also the other thing. You know, if you want to set up a company and do this, I'd advise you to do it with someone else, because not only is it helpful to have someone to work with in terms of knowledge, you know, being able to enjoy the highs and the lows with someone else, because you know, rugby players are all team players, and suddenly to just be by yourself all day is harder than you think. And I think the bigger side of that is that you're sharing risk with someone. You know, you can, if you ever make a big loss, for instance, or one of your properties burns down, you know, you're sharing that risk with someone else. So I wouldn't advise anyone to do this by themselves. However, you know, if you do it by yourself, there's obviously bigger returns in it.
Yeah. This last one for me, because that's 30 minutes now. I'll ask you one more, and then we can take a couple of questions from the lads if there's any. Just, you kind of touched on there, pitfalls and dangers. When we were playing together at Falcons, mate, in 2006, 2007, I remember I bought a property in Bulgaria, a flat with Anthony Elliott. We went half-seas each. We've still got it. We've been to it once in about 12 years. And I'm pretty sure it's not worth what we paid for it. So yeah, just pitfalls and dangers. And, you know, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is, they say. So, you know, would you agree with that? Because Vis, I get the sense that, you know, and I was the same when I was a player. I had an interest in property, and I kind of think as a player, well, you know, you kind of think you've got a bit of disposable income. It's literally just plow it into a few properties and it's going to make you some money. But that's certainly not the case, is it?
No, it's not always the case. You know, you have to do something really silly, like buy a flat in Bulgaria, to lose money. But I think, and this comes back to strategy again. You know, do you want rental income every month that's going to make you money, or do you want to just put your money somewhere where it's going to cover the rent, and then in a couple of years you've got a flat that's worth a lot more money? There's different sides to investing, so make sure you figure out what you want to do and you align what you buy to that strategy. But yeah, you know, if it sounds too good to be true, it almost always is. You know, if you're getting offered something at an incredible discount, but you got to pay someone $3,000 to buy it, it's probably because there's something wrong with it. And it actually turned out that this flat was in an area that had just lost the most value in England. since lockdown. So they're always, do your study, get good relationships with agents. Agents have got all the inside information. Strike a relationship with a couple of agents. Make sure that they keep you up to date with what's going on, what you should and should not be buying. Because there's also a benefit in it for them. If they sell you something good, you might then come back in a couple of years and buy something else from them again. But yeah, be wary of the LinkedIn property experts or investors. There's hundreds of them flying around, and the question I want to ask them, and I don't because I work with them, is why, if you're so good at what you're doing, why are you not investing yourself? Why are you investing other people's money?
Yeah.
So that's the big one. But yeah, I think for me, I only invest in areas I know. So I only look at Edinburgh, and I would advise anyone to do that. Go back to where you're from or where you've lived, and where are the good areas and the less good areas. What the rents are like, and calculate your yield, and have a good understanding of what you want to do.
Yeah. Viss, that's awesome, mate. Thanks very much. Appreciate your time, buddy. Listen, lads, is there anyone who wants to come in with a question, or just fire it into the chat, or come on screen if you want? No worries if there's not any questions. Just while you're having a think there about questions, so just for me listening to that, I said at the start, hopefully you might, if you take one thing from this webinar, that's great. Just for me, probably 3 things I took from it was, from Viss, is have a plan to get out, get as much experience as you can. That's key. And then disposable income. You don't, lads, I can tell you myself as well, you don't realize how much you're earning till you're out the game. Like a life-changing amount that you could be doing something with. So, those 3, have a think about those 3 things. But Viss, thanks very much. If the lads want to connect with you via LinkedIn or anything, is that all right, Viss?
Yeah, of course. Just send me a message. Okay,
lads. Any questions, or we'll wrap it up there? Nah, all good. Right, Viss, thank you very much. Much appreciated, lads. Thanks for joining. Chat to you all soon. Thanks, Nell.
Cheers.